Where's the love? Is love a four-letter word in your marriage? Are you looking at your spouse and singing the words of Weird Al Yankovic? I'd rather clean all the bathrooms in Grand Central Station with my tongue than spend one more minute with you. If that's how you're feeling, this video is just for you. Hey, my name's JR and welcome to My Marriage is Worth It, where we bring hope and joy to dead, dying, and boring marriages. If that sounds like you or something you can benefit from, go ahead and click that subscribe button, hit that notification bell, and you'll be notified every time we post videos just like this one. So you hate your spouse, you hate your husband, you hate your wife, or maybe you just feel like there's no love at all. Well, in today's video, we're going to talk about how to get the love back. But first, a true story. As I've mentioned before, my wife and I were separated 3 times in the first 3 years of our marriage, and before our first separation, my wife really wrestled with insecurities. She struggled with the way that she felt about herself, the way she felt about me and other women, and I would do everything in my power to show her that I loved her. I would try to encourage her, I'd try to strengthen her, I would affirm my love for her, but no matter what I did, it was never enough. And then one day she said the words to me that I'll never forget, the words that I had been dreaming of. She said, JR, I finally know what I'm going to do whenever I have bad feelings about you and other women. And I'm like, oh. She said, whenever I have a bad feeling about you and how you feel about other women, I'm not going to say anything about it. I'm just going to assume the worst of you. I was devastated. All hope was gone. My dream was that I was going to be able to show my wife the love that I had for her, that I was going to win her over with my love. And now she's saying that she's just going to assume the worst of me. And not only that, but she said she's not even going to tell me about it. She's going to do it, and I'll never know if she really trusts me or not. All hope was gone. And I want you to know that that was the day
that love died.
I know what it feels like to feel like you don't love your spouse. I know what it feels like to feel like you hate your spouse. But I also know what it feels like to get that love back. So in this video, I want to give you 7 ways to get the love back. 1 way for every day of the week. The first way is to look for the good. Now you're probably thinking, but JR, I don't see any good. There is no good. There's nothing good about my husband, or there's nothing good about my wife. There's nothing good about our marriage and our relationship. How can I look for the good? Well, you know, Zig Ziglar tells a story about how gold miners look for gold. They have to sift through all of this dirt, all of this sand, all of these rocks for hours and days at a time. But when they're sifting through them, they're not looking for the dirt. They're not looking for the bad stuff. They're looking for the gold. And that's what you need to start doing, is you need to start looking for the gold in your spouse. Start looking for the good things. Don't always be looking at the bad things. Are there bad things? Yes, there are. Sure there are. There's bad things for everyone. And there's lots of bad things we can look at. But what we want to do, if we want to get the love back, we truly want to get the love back, we need to start looking for the good. One way that you can do that is get a piece of paper and a pen, and I want you to write down just 5 things that are good about your spouse. And it doesn't have to be anything monumental. Maybe it's they dress nice, or maybe it's they smell nice, or maybe it's, you know, that one time in 1985 they put their dishes in the sink. I don't know what it is, but write down 5 things that are good. And if you can't think of 5 things, then write down 3 things. And listen, if you can't think of 3 things, write down 1 thing. And you can't tell me that there's not one good thing about your spouse. And then every day, start that day by reading that thing or that list of 5 things that is good about your spouse. So many times when we're in a marriage that is struggling, we get up in the day, in the morning, and we're already in a bad mindset. So you need to get up in a good mindset. Get up by reading the good things and then start looking for good things. Look for more things that you can add to that list. The second way is to accept them the way that they are. Now I know if you're thinking, you're telling me that I need to accept the way that they are? We're not saying that you need to accept their bad behavior or that they don't need to take responsibility for their actions. We're not talking about that. What we're saying is you need to accept them for the person that they are. You need to understand that this is who they are. So many times we say, I wish they would be this way, or I wish they would do that, or I wish they would just change. But wishing is not going to do anything for us. We need to be realistic here, and we need to look at the situation for what it is and accept them for where they are and understand that. And then we need to love them through that. You know, many parents deal with this with their children. You know, I know with our children, sometimes they make decisions that I would not make. Sometimes their choices are different than the choices that I would make. But I have to realize that they're on their own walk with God. And no matter how much I want to control them and I want to make them do things the way I want them to do things, they are their own person. They can make their own decisions, they have their own thoughts, and I can't control them or their situation. And it's the same thing with your spouse. You can't control them. You can't make them do the right thing. You can't make them treat you properly. You can't do any of that stuff. But you can control the way you respond. So we need to accept where they are and understand that nobody is perfect. Which leads to the next way to get the love back. We need to search our own hearts. The Bible says, "Search me, O God, and know my heart. Test me and know my anxious thoughts. See if there is any offensive way in me, and lead me in the way everlasting." So I don't know how to break this to you, but nobody's perfect. We're all sinners. The Bible says no one is righteous, no, not even one. All have sinned and fallen short of the glory of God. So we need to ask God to search our own hearts, to search our motivations. Again, understanding that they're not perfect either. We know that they've made mistakes, but we need to start looking at ourselves. And many times when we look inside, when we look at our heart starts to soften for them. And the fourth way is forgiveness. So they've done a lot of things to you. You got to learn how to forgive. You know, as a Christian, that is the hallmark of our faith, is forgiveness. And as Christians, we are commanded to forgive. The Bible says, "Be kind and compassionate to one another, forgiving each other as Christ has forgiven you." And if you don't learn how to forgive your spouse, eventually those things become resentments. And once a resentment takes hold, it can be very difficult to find the love for your spouse in that situation. So if that's something you deal with, we created a video talking about putting the past behind you and getting over those resentments. There's a link down in the description below. The fifth way to get the love back for your spouse is to stop comparing them. No more comparisons. Nothing compares to you. Sorry, it's my Sinead O'Connor impersonation. We got to stop comparing our spouse to our friend's spouse. Stop comparing your husband to somebody else's husband. Stop comparing your wife to someone else's wife. Stop comparing your marriage to someone else's marriage. That's not your marriage. That's not your husband. That's not your wife. For better or worse, this is your marriage. This is your husband. This is your wife. This is your situation. Don't compare it to someone else's. And not only should you not compare it to them because you'll put unrealistic expectations on your spouse in your marriage, but you don't know what that other couple is going through. They may look all beautiful and plastic on the outside, but on the inside, they have their own struggles. They have their own issues, their own problems. Right now, we need to own our relationship. We need to own our marriage and our spouse, and we need to focus on what needs to be done here. And if we're always looking at other people, that's never going to happen. Which leads to number 6 on our list: get real. Start having some realistic expectations. Many marriages are falling apart because of all these unrealistic expectations. Couples feel like their spouse should be acting this way or doing this. We need to understand we're all individuals and we're all different, and we're going to approach things differently, and we need to not try to make our spouse be exactly like us. And if they don't live up to the expectations we have for them, then it's all over. We need to accept them, as we said earlier, for who they are. And hey, listen, I'm not saying that we shouldn't have expectations, but we need to have realistic expectations. And maybe you're thinking, yeah, my spouse knows exactly what I expect of them. But ask yourself, are these really realistic expectations? I remember when I was in the Air Force, I was a firefighter in the Air Force, and we had a new tech sergeant came into the station, and he wanted to show us how we should be cleaning the fire station. So he actually took us into the bathroom, and he got down and he started cleaning the toilet, so that we would know exactly what he expected. Now, that was great that we knew now this is what he expected, but his expectation was unrealistic. He wanted everything to be perfect. And listen, if you're going through your marriage with these unrealistic expectations, expecting your spouse to be perfect, that is a recipe for disaster. So get real. I'm not saying that you shouldn't have expectations, but they need to be realistic expectations. And if your expectations aren't realistic, that is a recipe for disaster. And the 7th way to get the love back, my friends, is to choose love. Love is a choice. It's not just a feeling. It's not just an emotion. Love is a choice. And so is hate. Hate is a choice as well. But we are commanded in the Bible to choose love. Jesus tells us to love our enemies. He said, "You've heard that it was said, love your neighbor and hate your enemy. But I tell you, love your enemies, and pray for those who persecute you. And I'm telling you, when you choose love, when you choose, you say, I'm getting up this morning, I'm going to look for the good things in my spouse. I'm going to accept them for how they are. I'm going to have realistic expectations. I'm going to do all these things, and I'm going to choose love. It won't be long before the feelings of love start to be rekindled. Okay, so now it's your turn. Which one of these things are you going to focus on this week to help bring back the love in your marriage? Let us know in the comments below. And hey, if you want to know more or learn how to apply these principles to your marriage, go ahead and click on the description below for more videos and resources. Until next time, my marriage is worth it. Is yours?